Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today, welcome to Year 5 in Review. We are basically going to be going over everything with Tom Clancy's The Division 2's 5th year of post-launch content. Like I said, discussing just about everything there is to. But I'm not alone. Today, I am joined by somebody who I'm sure a lot of you know very well, revered member and an associate of mine within the content creator community here on YouTube for The Division NGN. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Good morning and afternoon for yourself.
And midday and
And
middle of the
midday,
night,
midday. Yeah, sorry.
wherever these
Uh,
people are.
do you do that off the cuff? Because look, you sound very professional. You're like a radio presenter. So
That was off the cuff. I have like
it
five
was.
word notes on
That's
each line, but yeah,
fantastic. No, well,
starting
kudos
it
to
off
you.
with compliments. I can't. um, so
Yeah.
yeah, this format that we're kind of in right now, I've kind of dubbed round table. We'll see if that sticks. But we figured that this was just kind of a good format for bigger discussions like these, and we thought that in the future, if there's notable events or things we want to talk about, this would kind of be a fun platform just to do that and share our thoughts and discuss these things. So we are already in contact, with some other people and creators who we would definitely love to have on here in the future. This is not limited to just me and you. And so
Mhm.
hopefully people know that. But yeah, today it is us two. And like I said, we're going to be discussing and reviewing all things Year 5, all the content that released, or all the content has released for it by now. Year 6 is on the way in less than 2 weeks, so this seemed like a pretty ideal time to look back at the year we just had. Um,
Exciting times.
Indeed. So yeah, anything else you wanna say before we dive in here?
No, I think you pretty much smashed it out. You're like I said, I'm impressed. So
Thank you.
I need to taper that back. I apologize. So
Oh,
this is me, my awkward me.
I
So
will not complain. Sweet. Well, then I figured then let's really quickly just kind of establish some setup for how we got here, how Year 5 came about. They first confirmed it back in July of 2022, so that was a long time ago. That's when we first heard that it got greenlit. And, at the time, I think a lot of people, myself certainly, was excited. We just had the new development team's first update launch with Season 9, and so to hear that they were going to get a full another year to work on the game, with their getting their legs under them a bit more, that was exciting. We know they kept doing a lot of new hires over the duration of Year 4. And I also wanted to point out that Year 5 brought on a whole new sub-team that we learned about in Shanghai. They were the ones who developed the Paradise Lost incursion. So, there were things going on behind the scenes, and then we kind of launched into Year 5 that came out last year. So I figured to start off, let's go over each of the three major seasons and updates the Year 5 delivered. And for each one, I'll kind of lay out what we got with that update. And then I figured the two of us would just share our overall impressions, whether that's something positive, a critique, something noteworthy that stood out to you, whatever. So we'll start with Season 1. That was Broken Wings, came out in June of last year in 2023. Among the notable things in this season, we got the first part of the castle settlement reconstruction that unlocked in Season 11, but we didn't start doing like the objectives there until Season 1. The manhunt that time around shifted focus from going after targets to saving friendly allies. That was kind of the new twist that season. It was also the first implementation of the new kind of gameplay flow of manhunts where you were being like narratively guided to each location instead of just having like a checklist of things to go after. It, of course, brought the Descent roguelike game mode to The Division 2. That was the big content release of that season. Some of the new items that came with that season, we had the Electric brand set, the Cavalier gear set, the St. Elmo's engine AR, which has become very popular over time, the Shocker Punch Exotic holster, and one notable feature that I recall from that season was that they did the big open world XP rebalancing for the activities out in the open world. So, NGN, what was some of your thoughts or your impressions of Season 1, looking back?
Okay, so if we're going to talk to the castle settlement reconstruction, I won't lie. I was hoping for a little bit something different when it came to rescuing the hostages
Yeah,
and building up the castle settlement. I thought maybe we might be hunting pieces of equipment down and actually being a part of the construction in some way, rather than just putting someone in the position and then bang, everything is suddenly working. But other than that, no complaints from me. The story wise, I think, was actually a nice carryover from the attack on the White House. The attack was definitely more significant than I think most people realize, because it really shows how vulnerable the SHD really are at this point.
yeah,
Plus, we rescued one of my favorite characters, Eva, from Kenley College.
Yeah, the throwback there was pretty cool how they incorporated those
Yeah,
characters.
I really enjoyed some of these older characters being brought forward.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with the castle reconstruction. I think it was like when we first logged on to that season. Remember, there was like those 3 quick little objectives where you had to go and like pull a few
Yes.
levers around, and that kind of hinted
Yep.
that like maybe there was going to be more of that throughout the season. But I agree, like we were involved in the castle's rebuilding, but it didn't necessarily feel like it maybe as much as it could have. Again, that's probably just a limitation to the resources they have on hand. But
Oh, 100%. Like turning a couple of valves and flicking some switches didn't feel like I was actually rebuilding anything. So no, I agree, and I like what you said there about the resources they have, and I think I could probably touch on that a little bit later.
yeah,
But yeah, no, 100% on the same path of thought there.
yeah. I will also say that the one thing that definitely stood out to me when I think back on season 1 was, I think it was one of the best implementations. Like I mentioned, it was that new manhunt structure where, like, instead of you go to this zone, you do 4 control points and 3 bounties and you move on. They actually now guided us between the different objectives. This is the first time we saw that. And I remember specifically season 1's feeling really good. At least, that could be rose tinted glasses, but that's my recollection, was that it felt really cohesive to go between those objectives.
It felt clean. It definitely felt clean.
Yeah.
I'll just definitely agree with that too.
Yeah. So,
it was just more that I guess we're hoping to be a little bit more involved with that whole construction side of things. That's the only thing I'd probably say that was a bit of a not a disappointment, just not what I was expecting. I
yeah,
guess.
absolutely. So then moving on, we had Year 5 Season 2 Puppeteers. That one came out in October of 2023. This notably came with the second half of the castle reconstruction that we just talked about. This also had a bit of a hybrid manhunt where we were still rescuing hostages, but we also had a definitive target to take down at the end of it, that of course being the recruiter. This, for content side of things, brought with it the Paradise Lost incursion. Some of the new items this season were the Langmo brand set, the Ortiz Zero gear set, the Ouroboros SMG, the exotic SMG, the Iron Lung exotic LMG, the Tip of the Spear gear set rebalance. This also brought the Legacy Manhunt system, which maybe you can talk to a little bit, and the Winter Holiday event came in that season as well. What were some of the standout things or your impressions from this season?
Much like last season, we were rescuing hostages that were taken away during the White House attack. Uh, just talking to the story for a second, obviously my personal sort of piece. I have a certain affinity with one of the hostages that we rescued, Birdie, but we're going to hear about more about her later on.
Mm-hmm.
But regarding the gear itself, I won't lie. A lot of the gear released in season 5 did feel a little bit lackluster, at least for the way that I play.
Right.
So I run probably maybe 6 builds these days, maybe just 3 for heroic full directive content. But I've struggled to find any usefulness with these gear sets and brand sets in the last year on what I'm already using.
Right.
So I mainly play solo. So with a lot of these builds sort of being really focused on support play or really obscure ways of playing, I'm just going to throw out there with the grenade builds that we're seeing coming through.
Yeah.
As fun as they are, I'm not going to focus a set around that, especially not on my own.
Yeah, for sure.
But there have been some amazing exotic weapons come out this year. One of them was definitely the Saint Elmo's engine, and the other one, which will impact the way that I've actually used that weapon at all, comes out very soon as well, or has come out. I think in the next season afterwards, actually. He hit season 2.
Which one? What was the name of that weapon?
The Ouroboros.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that came with the incursion, and now everyone uses it because it's like
impacted the hell out of me. It's like I've been using the same Elmos more, but the Ouroboros, and I'm on PC, so I don't really use SMGs at all.
But if it makes you use it, then that says something.
So good. It's so good. I cannot use something else in the other slot. So
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a valid point that you bring up about some of the new gear's relevance. I mentioned that this season also brought that Tip of the Spear gear set rebalance, and I know a lot of the community wasn't the most thrilled about it because they felt that it made it a bit less viable than it even was before. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting conversation. For me, I know the big standout from season 2 was the incursion. I think personally that was the best
Oh my
piece
god.
of content that they, yeah, and I know we'll get to this more later too. But that was definitely like, I think the best piece of content Year 5 brought with it. I thought it was incredibly well done. I basically have zero complaints in hindsight. Like, I just really loved everything about that thing.
If this is the face of future game modes, particular incursions, yes, I am all for that. I loved raids. Don't get me wrong; they were just so hard to get people
Yeah.
in the right mainframe mindset to actually sort of run through them. Incursions, I've run it more times than I didn't actually think I'd be able to run it. I found a clan and I've run through it more times than I can remember.
Yeah.
And it's probably some of the most fun content I've played in the Division 2. So yeah, I love to see more of these later on.
100%. I'm glad we're in agreement there.
Mm.
Well, then we move on to Year 5, Season 3, which is currently what we're still in right now, but titled Vanguard. That one came out back in February. The new main hunt take this time around was investigations. We weren't targeting enemies, I should say, hostiles, or saving allies. Rather, we were going around hunting down clues about where Agent Kelso had gone. And then as far as like the other big addition this season, we of course had Project Resolve. This brought big stability improvements to the game, PvP rebalancing, a bunch of changes to weapons, talents, sprint sets, gear sets, project's revamp, global event buffs, expertise cost reduction across the board, tons of stuff. And then for some of the new items, we have the Palisade Brain Set, the Aegis Gear Set, the Vindicator Exotic Rifle, the Rugged Gauntlets Exotic Gloves. One final time, NGN, what were some of your impressions of this season?
No, the manhunt itself, absolutely, 100%. I actually really enjoyed that particular season. But as far as the weapon Project Resolve, it didn't hit home for me.
No.
I'm not a PvP player by any
Mhm.
means. It's just not my sort of jam with the Division 2. So I'm actually quite interested to see what you thought about Project Resolve, especially around the PvP side of things.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that was probably my biggest highlight, or more specifically, the stuff that they did to conflict, which I guess I didn't cover in the brief there, but they removed expertise and shade levels from conflict. They also vastly buffed the rewards from conflict, and then of course the base PvP combat
Oh, I did
changes
see
they
that.
made. Yeah,
Yeah.
the base PvP combat changes they made, of course, apply there as well. And so, personally, for me, I always enjoyed conflict to a degree, but it had the same kind of imbalance that a lot of the rest of the game's PvP had.
Yeah.
But ever since this update went live, myself and a lot of people I play with are in conflict more often than I think anything else in the game. So at least for me,
Oh, very good.
that, yeah, it shifted a lot of more enjoyment there, and I feel like my time is rewarded a lot better when I go in there. So
I
that's
will
probably the
admit,
big standout.
going into conflict from New Zealand, I usually can't fill a matchmaking party. That's why I've probably never played it. So
it doesn't
it does
even.
have an impact there.
That sucks though that it doesn't even if you were like higher paying, it doesn't try and put you on a different region.
No, I probably need to VPN to a different location, to be honest. So
Gotcha.
it is a shame because I do miss a bit of a portion of the game there, and that was the same for the Division 1. But I guess that's our servers down here, down under.
Yeah.
So
Well, hopefully,
um,
maybe in the future they can rework it so that it does.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the I'm all for improvements, stability wise, balancing all that sort of side of things. It is a shame that it's impacted. It has impacted sort of stuff coming out a little bit later now, but we need
Right.
to remember it's all about that whole. They're a team of 25 with extras being thrown in every now and then. I think they've done pretty well considering. It still blows my mind that we've got a DLC coming out, given how small the team is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, again, we'll talk more about some of Project Resolve's impact a little later on.
Yeah.
So those were the 3 big seasons and updates that we got in Year 5. And so now that we've refreshed our memory on some of those and taken into account, kind of all the aspects that these updates delivered, what was your favorite season and update in Year 5?
Oh, it's got to be Vanguard.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, like I did not predict.
Now, be honest, is it just because Keener is back?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm not. Yeah, there's no secret that Ken is one of my favorite characters in this franchise, and I felt like we lost out on something big when he got supposedly killed off in Warlords of New York, because he added a lot of doubt to what we're doing. There's a lot of we like to believe we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. We're just shooting them down.
Yeah.
But he always added that question of like, are you really? are you fighting for the right people? And him being brought back just brings the story into a much dirtier direction, but it's a much more interesting direction at the same time.
I feel like almost
Honestly, if it was
in.
just
Oh, go ahead.
no, sorry, if it was just good versus bad, I probably would have lost interest a long time ago. But there's always been several shades of grey with everything we're doing in the division.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like he's been that one in the middle that's kind of going, "Are you sure?" Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure," but you're making me doubt myself now. So
Almost in, I feel like every good story, there has to be that force that's, even if you have like a character aside that's like very morally and objectively good, you still need
yeah,
that force that's like pushing against it to create some of that that drama, that conflict. So he brings
yeah,
that to the
100%.
division. I'll say for me, my favorite update this year had to be season 2. And I say that for a few reasons. One, like I mentioned before, Paradise Lost, loved it too much, probably to
Oh,
not say
good
that.
call.
Also,
Yeah,
though,
good
I
call.
really did enjoy the manhunt in season 2. Primarily, all the stuff we got at the end. I thought that out of the 3 climax missions we got this year, my favorite was the recruiter one at White Oak. I really liked the mechanic they did with you losing access to the Shade Network. You lose your radar, you lose like your HUD, and it's just like you in the game. I really liked that kind of effect. I also thought that the final fight with him was cool. How he built up that fortification. You have to kind of take it down and then fight him with Birdie's help. Doing in and
It
out of
was
that.
brutal, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember the discussions around that. And people were like, "This is too hard," um,
yeah, yeah,
but I like that. And then also that was like, I want to say it was one of kind of the beefiest manhunts we got, not by much, but of course at the end you had that whole epilogue sequence where we got to go around the open world and track down his hideout. I thought that was a really cool like little addition
yeah,
that they didn't have to
yeah.
do, but they did. And so yeah, all in all, I think season 2 takes it for me. But I'd say,
No, I actually agree with that. The end of that season was very interesting and not sort of what I was expecting.
yeah,
So I guess that's where season 3 probably maybe was lacking a little bit. Although I loved where the story was going. Yeah, there definitely wasn't that massive boss fight, which was actually incredibly challenging. It reminded me of Sparkles, and I'm going
yeah.
to
Oh,
bring that up again
Sparkles.
because that bloody Sparkles, man.
Oh, Sparkles. But no, I think it's still completely valid to say that you like season 3. And
Yep.
conversely, in the same way that maybe season 2 changed our expectations there, you're like conditioned as a division player to think that a big mission is going to end with a big boss fight, which it's this one season 3's
Exactly.
technically did with the hunter, but you aren't like led to believe that in a way. You keep going,
Yeah.
you fight a few of those like true suns that fly in, and then you think there's going to be more stuff on the ship, at least I did, and then you come across the shade crate. So again, they also
Yeah. Yeah.
subverted, that's the word I was looking for, some of our expectations there too. And so it's cool. They're continually trying to do new stuff, I think, is what we can
I like that they're
conclude.
pushing that these seasons are becoming different in a lot of ways, especially over this year.
Yeah,
There is no expectations around. Well, I guess the way we're expecting to land, we're not getting that now, which is quite nice.
100%.
We actually have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, let's talk about especially for the next update coming up, but we'll get there later.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so yeah, great. Now that we've covered the overview of year 5, we kind of have a few topics that we thought would be interesting to go through, diving a bit deeper into what we got. Let's now flip back closer to season 1. We had the release of Descent, which obviously was a big departure gameplay wise from what we've done in the division before, but it also came with it a bunch of lore, and we'll get to that, I guess, in the next question. But firstly, the game mode itself was a very bold direction for them to go in, I think. Like I said,
huge.
introduced an entirely new like subgenre to the franchise in a way with the roguelite thing. So, in hindsight, what are your thoughts on Descent as a mode? And I think a big question that a lot of people have brought up, given what the player count of it seems to be these days, do you think it was a worthwhile endeavor for them to go in to add into the game?
I definitely wasn't a fan at first.
Mm-hmm.
Roguelites apparently aren't my thing. I'd never really played one before, to be fair.
Yeah.
But after 50 odd weeks of playing, I've grown to really enjoy it. But I don't play it as a roguelite. That's not the thing. I'm not playing for 8 hours to see if I can get to level 30, whatever.
Right.
I'm running through it to try and get the rewards there, and most of those are around the nemesis. So
Right.
I'm never going to be someone who will question, do we get more game modes that are different? Yeah, like I all game modes are good.
Yeah,
I've played this a lot more than I played Survival, and I loved Survival. Don't get me wrong; it was just a bit too stagnant for me. So there was no refreshing, there was no randomization, so I didn't play it as often as probably a lot of people do now.
for sure.
But with Descent, it was almost like I was starting a fresh character every week, but only playing for about 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah, and
Because
it's just a
generally I
big
get to the
different
Nemesis,
experience.
take it down, and that's kind of it. That's kind of it, and it's only gotten easier and faster since it first came out with some of the updates.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, I think I'm in a similar boat that there's some people out there who really just don't care for it and don't play it at all, and that's fine. You know, everyone has their different preferences. I
Yeah,
definitely enjoy a lot the gameplay experience you can get out of Descent, especially once you get further in. You build up, you know, your talents and you start stacking them. You get really powerful, and that's fun.
yeah,
I think the biggest thing for me, and a lot of people have pointed this out over time, is the fact that you can't save your progress and come back later. Definitely, in my opinion, hinders the replayability a lot because I can only imagine if you could, let's say you get to loop 10 and then you want to say save and I'm going to come back later, right? And I log off for the day because I've already invested, what, 2 hours maybe to get there?
yeah. It's quite
Um,
a lot of time investment. I guess to
yeah,
get to certain levels. I think I've only ever managed to make it to about 13 because it was like, all right, I'm 3 hours in.
I've got a life I got to get
I
back
need to
to.
get off. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So I can only imagine like if they did have that feature and like you jump in there with 4 friends and you, like you said, you get to 10, maybe the next day you get to 15, you keep going. If you build your way up slowly to like 40, 50 and it starts getting really intense, that could have been a really cool, you know, thing to invest your
Oh
time
yeah,
into in the game. So that is of course a disappointment. They have explained why they weren't able to construct it that way and that's totally valid. That's just kind of a pipe dream. But yeah, I think Descent was an
yeah.
interesting experimentation. Certainly brought something all new to the franchise. And so, yeah,
I,
interesting there.
I I quite enjoy it now. I didn't at start. I didn't at the start, but now that it's like a fresh playthrough of the character every week, basically, I quite enjoy it now. But the only disappointment, I guess, but not so much for myself, is probably that there are some comms there locked behind it, which a lot of people just aren't willing to uh, sort of
To do.
grind out every
Yeah,
single week. And once you miss a week, you're behind a week. Like right now, I'm pretty sure I'm behind about 3 weeks, so,
right.
and that's even after the last thing. So there is a little bit of frustration there from the law crowd, I guess. With I don't like this game mode. I don't want to play it, and even if I did start playing it, I'm so far behind. I'm not going to catch up. So I'll just watch someone else who's done it. And I get that. I get that. But this level of law that they're throwing in there, I'm not just talking about warhounds doing T poses. There's a lot of valuable lore that comes in there that actually
Yeah,
explains the story to a new depth that you know the casual cutscenes and things aren't showing.
yeah.
So that's a big piece to me. That's me just digging deep as far as I want to know everything. So
100%. And that was exactly what we were going to cover next was, yeah, the whole system with the Descent comms. Because you're so lore focused, I think you have a very good perspective on this. I'll just briefly explain it to anyone who maybe, you know, hasn't done it. But every week, if you go and
yeah,
defeat the Nemesis, which takes, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes for an average run, you can get a comm that, like you were just saying, can, a lot of them give a lot of very interesting depth to not just like a narrow scope of stuff, but like to the entire division world. And so it's been brought into question, is it necessarily a fair system to just play this one mode to get that? Is it asking people too much to do it every week? Because like you said, if you fall behind, there's no, you don't like get to the next week, you're still only getting one. So you can technically fall behind by weeks and weeks and you won't get them until well into year 6. What do you think about I guess one, I'll play devil's advocate. Um in many ways, it's technically not asking you to do more than, let's say, playing the manhunts, for example, to get comms there, right? It's still, the game is still asking you to play one type of content to get one type of reward. It's just that instead, you're being asked to do Descent instead to get, you know, the lore that way. So in that sense, it's still functioning the same way. But because of the other limitations we talked about, like falling behind, like all that stuff, do you think there's any changes they could or should in the future make to the system to make the lore a bit more accessible to a broader amount of people?
yeah, 100%. That fear of missing out thing, I think, has been thrown out a few times. And if there's some way of catching up with those comms while playing this content, I think that will probably remove some of that straight away. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that maybe don't care about the intensity of detail around the story that maybe some of us do.
Right.
So I get that this won't impact them too much and they're not too worried. But the information you can get from these things will explain a lot of things that have happened obviously very recently. So
Right.
giving some sort of catch-up feature somehow, like we had after one of the updates recently, would be fantastic. And I think that would probably bring more people into the party to try and play through that content. It's not as challenging as a lot of people think it is. It's horrible the first time you play if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I get it. I wasn't a fan of it, but I played it a couple of weeks, and you know what? Suddenly it was actually quite fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure if they change that at all going into year 6. Shifting gears a little bit, but I guess kind of staying chronological to how the year played out. We did talk a lot about this earlier, so we can just maybe get some brief thoughts here. But I was going to talk again about the castle reconstruction. I will say the one thing for me, because we talked about how we wished we were a bit more involved with that going on. It makes sense, perfect sense to me lore-wise. You know, the White House is now kind of crippled after the stuff in Season 11, so a lot of the focus is shifting to the castle. The one thing by the end of the construction that I had wished for, because you have basically everything there. You have your crafting station, stash. There's even more obscure things like you can choose your Darkstone perks. There's a barber. Like everything is there that you would need. The one thing I wish is that it was an actual social space and you could see other players there, because then it could functionally be the same as the White House. But many times I still find myself going back to the White House, and a lot of people I play with are like, why would I go to the castle? Because there's still not that social element. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts there on do you think that's something that if they had done that, people might be using the castle more, or do you think maybe it doesn't need that? What do you think there?
No, 100% agree. Even if I'm in New York, to be honest, not even the castle, I'm in New York.
Right.
I'll still go back to the castle for my sort of my end of nights breakdown of all the gear that I've collected and expertise fodder, I guess, if we're going to flow it in there. So no, I 100% agree. It just doesn't feel like home, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I guess we'll see, in the future. The White House is hanging on for now, but maybe it'll...
Yeah. It's still going. It's got some bullet holes in it now, but it's still good.
And still the dead bodies out there that are definitely decomposing at this point.
Dead bodies not be dragged? Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's most of the stuff then for Season 1. Again, we did also briefly touch on this, but let's say again real quick that Incursions came back with Season 2. This was, of course, a big form of content that they had from the Division 1. That was like the pinnacle endgame challenge there back in that game. I think me and you, it's fair to say, represent two different categories of players in this game, or at least certainly in the content we put out. We cover different stuff most of the time. So I know you said you've been big into this Incursion, and so I'd be curious to know your thoughts on, should the Division 2 continue beyond Year 6? Because at least from what we know, Year 6 is focusing on season stuff, on the DLC, all that. But if it gets to Year 7, Year 8, would you want them to, let's say you had full control of what kind of content they could develop for the game, would you choose for them to go and make another Incursion after what we saw with Paradise Lost? Did you like it that much that you'd want to see more?
That is the one thing I'd like to see more of, to be fair. And I was someone who never thought I would actually be able to play it, because I was a solo player up until I met a clan that happily helped me learn it and create builds to actually run through it. And good God, it's probably the most fun content I've played. And yeah, I've played all the raids and things, but this just felt so much more accessible. Yeah, we're running it in 10 minutes. I saw someone in my clan tell me they did it in just 12 minutes with 2 people the other day.
With two people, wow.
Yes, it's fantastic. They're ridiculous, but absolutely, I would like to see more Incursions. That was some of the most fun content I've played in the Division 2. I want other game modes, absolutely, but I think Incursions need to be worked on and just further increased as far as the number of options that come out, because that's been some good times. I still want to jump in and play Incursions, even though I've done it a whole bunch of times. I think that's probably some of the most fun content I've played in the Division 2.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way, and I think our reactions both to that speak to the quality that it was made at. And again, I mentioned earlier, it was made by like this team from Shanghai that came in that, at least to my knowledge, had not worked on the Division 2 before. So they just came in and knocked it out of the park day one. I mean, seriously, I don't have like a single complaint about that thing. I thought the fights were awesome. I thought the location was really cool, that it was the Merritt estate from that family that we'd seen ever since Division 1. It was
It
just really
gave
good.
some vulnerabilities as well with Natalia in the
Yeah,
main story. Like, you don't need to hear this obviously through playing it,
yeah,
but it showed some vulnerabilities with Natalia as far as the story goes that we hadn't really seen, which is funny because it's also recorded by Lauren Stone, which cracks
yeah.
me up still. So,
Yeah, very cool Easter egg there. But that was also it's good that you bring that up. That was a departure from how they did incursions in Division 1. I don't know how much you played
mm,
those, but they basically had
oh, very much.
little
Yeah.
to no lore significance at all, right? They were just kind of their
Yeah.
own activities. But this one very
They were
cleverly,
just a boss fight, essentially. It was
yeah,
just a boss fight thrown at left field. So this actually really added to the story element, which I quite appreciated.
yeah, it ties in, but it's also not to someone who maybe isn't going to interact with it. It's not like so pivotal that you then miss out on or you don't understand what's happening moving forward, right? It was
Yeah,
like a
no,
nice little
correct,
side
correct.
piece.
And that's sort of the descent comms as well, I think, for a lot of ways. It's people are missing those. They're gutted. They're missing them. There is ways of finding them, obviously, but
Through your videos and your channel.
I was going to go there, but thank you. No, it's more just like they're not gonna impact the game. You're not going to slow down progress for people that don't really care so much about that sort of side of things. Which is why I love the storytelling and the way they do it with games like The Division.
Yeah.
So you could still miss that content and still understand the direction of the story. But if you really want to get into the story, these are the things you need to dig into to actually get that full experience, to understand what happened at the end of the last season.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually a perfect segue into the next little bit that I wanted to talk about that we
Nice.
haven't covered yet, which was the Legacy Manhunt system that they also added in with Year 5 Season 2. And to preface a little bit, what a lot of players were facing before this was added was the fact that, yes, the Division 2 is very accessible when you return to it. Like, they don't have a gear score. They don't have this kind of other stuff that creates a huge amount of grind if you miss out on the game for a while. But the one
Yep.
area that they definitely did not offer much compensation in was story in past seasons. If you missed, let's say, seasons 3 and 4, and you played when Warlords came out, and all of a sudden you're coming back during season 9, a lot's happened there, and the game didn't really offer much of a way to catch up on what had happened. Unless you want to go on YouTube and
Yeah.
watch videos or do whatever. So when this system launched, it served as a way to try and remedy that. They have now a chronological timeline of all the seasons that went down. There's a bit of a text recap as to what went down there. And then you can also directly from there launch to those various climax missions that were released to get a sense of what went down there. I'm curious on your thoughts, though, as such a story-focused and lore-focused person. Do you think the system as it is now does enough to catch people up fully on what's happened? Or do you think there are other improvements or features they could maybe implement down the line to further increase its efficiency or effectiveness there?
No, I quite like that. That's a good question. So the legacy manhunt system, admittedly I haven't touched on any of it because I play every season as it comes up.
Right.
But what I loved most about it is it gives some dates behind it. So
Right.
if you're really looking about trying to piece the story together from the very start there, it shows you when all of this stuff happened, so you can start aligning it with the other sort of multimedia as well.
Yeah.
But I've always thought there needs to be, and I've hassled Lauren about this a lot, some sort of updates around how we can bring people up to time with, because this game has been around for 5 years. The whole franchise has been around for what, 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need some sort of timeline. It's getting a little bit dirty as far as knowing understanding where we're actually at.
Right.
So I would like to see more for those who are more interested in the story. But otherwise, the legacy manhunt system, I think, is a massive step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's definitely leagues better than what we had before, which is basically nothing.
Yeah.
And they did make
Nothing.
it in
Yeah, it was
season
just
3.
S and click, and hopefully we can play the right one. So
Yeah. They also added then in season 3 the ability to get the old comms from it, which is good as well. You can now go and
That's
get
nice.
each of the comms from the old seasons. I think the one thing from my perspective that they could still do to make it still a little bit more I don't know what the word is, a little bit more full than what it is now, maybe, is the fact that those
Yeah.
text recaps that I mentioned, they're pretty brief. Like, if you go and read them, sometimes they're just like for season 11, maybe, we're going after Stovepipe. And it's like, cool, but who is that? And what were some of the events that happened
Yeah.
in the season leading up to that final mission? So I feel like if there's any way that they could go in and beef those sections up a little bit more, that would probably help people even more catch up a little bit. But like you said, for the most
I
part,
think there just needs to be an end of year sort of review on what's happened in the last year, and then the occasional what's happened up until now.
right.
That would probably really help bring people up to date, because right now it's you may have you may have heard the analytics reports coming through, and they're 30 seconds long, and I catch you up on what's happened in the last season. But realistically, we want to know what's happened in the last year.
Right. And I think it's also fair to say that for as many people watch and enjoy those, that there's still only a fraction of the community that actually tunes into those streams. And so to have
That's
something
true.
that's available in game helps a
Yeah.
lot. Because that is ultimately where the majority of people are, of course, is the people
No,
playing
that's
the
a good
game
point.
itself.
I've recently started playing. My wife started playing Destiny 2,
Yeah.
and realistically, I jump into that, and that game's been going on even longer than this particular one. And God, I have no idea what's happening with the story. There is no way to actually catch up with it. It would just be really cool for people jumping into the Division 2 and the Division 3 when it comes out to really have a decent recap of what's actually going on.
Yeah. It's important for a lot of people, as much as we play games for the enjoyment of the gameplay, people also want to know what's happening with the story. And so if it
Yeah,
doesn't offer that,
gameplay
then what are you
first,
gonna do?
immersion second. That's for me. That's if I don't have that immersion, I move over when the gameplay gets stagnant. So
No,
so
I'm
it's a
with you
big
all the
part for
way.
me. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, good thoughts there. Let's then shift on towards season 3. And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's dive in a bit more to Project Resolve. I think the one notable thing was that it was a big directional shift from the original roadmap that we got for year 5 back at Division Day last year. They originally didn't say this was a thing they were doing at all. And I think in hindsight, we learned maybe it was around August last year that they decided, yeah, we need to
Yeah.
do an update for the game focused on the back end of the game, bring it up to where it needs to be so that we can actually achieve some of these pretty big foundational changes that we want to make with stuff in year 6 that, we'll talk about in a little bit. But and I want to preface this question and topic by saying myself and you are not game developers, nor are the vast majority of people listening to this. So I know a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on Project Resolve and like, should it have happened? If they say it needs to happen for them to develop the game, then we just have to accept that. Like, we don't have the kind of comprehension to know what kind of things, went into that. But still, from a player perspective, because it's still completely valid to say that we're people invested in this game. We want to see this cool new stuff released on time, and Project Resolve bumped that stuff out by a lot. The seasons 2.0 and DLC that were originally going to come in season 4 are now from right now, like 5 to 6 months and like 9 months out respectively. So it bumped this stuff by a long ways. Do you think that the impact of Project Resolve and the effect that that's had on the game, it's tough for me to say, is it worth delaying future content? Because again, they said it needed to happen. But I guess, what are your feelings on that, by how far back it bumped stuff and what it did for the game in the meantime?
Yeah, I won't lie. The any balancing, any recalibration with current content is obviously very important to me. I've always sort of loved that sort of side of things, because things do get a bit stagnant and you realize certain pieces and certain metas are sort of overpowering everything else. But I would love to say that it should never impact deployment of future content.
Yeah.
But again, we know that this team is a very small team right now. This team was always non-existent a few years ago.
Yeah.
We're quite fortunate that they're still around to be able to support this. So it is unfortunate that it's delayed things, but I would probably prefer balancing over new content any day.
We want a game that it works as best as it can, compared to one that they're just layering stuff onto and then more and more things break down.
More
over
broken
time.
pieces sort of coming out. Yeah. So I haven't really felt the change that maybe has come from Project Resolve. It hasn't really changed too much in the way that I play. But do you think there was a lot of stuff around the PvP side of things that have been impacted by it?
It's tough. In my opinion, PvP feels way better, and I enjoy playing it a lot more than before, especially with like status effects and stuff. But I have seen a good number of people around the community say that they do not feel that way, and I don't know if they're saying that out of spite because of some of the delays, or if they truly do feel like it worsened the PvP experience. Obviously, I can't speak to what they think on it.
Of course.
In my opinion, it did. I do think there are systems that came with Project Resolve that have greatly improved the day-to-day stuff about the game and how maybe new players experience the game. Some of those being like what it did to projects. Those are now like way more worthwhile to engage with because you get relevant rewards. There's some better objectives and stuff. Global events was a big one this season. Like pretty much all the global events got revamped to be way more fun. You're way more powerful.
Oh, I will
And
admit those were quite fun. Yeah,
yeah,
no, I can't deny the global events have become suddenly really intensive that I want to be a part of. Whereas previously I would have actually just not bothered with them because I've already got the rewards. But
exactly.
now it's just wow. Yeah, some of the stuff you can do changes the whole game.
And I've seen a lot of the community say the same thing, like, "Oh, I actually want to participate in this now." And so I think that's really positive.
Yeah,
And then like the tinkering system, the fact that you can do that all from your inventory now. They redesigned the UI flow of that whole thing in the bench. I think that's beneficial. So Resolve definitely did, in my opinion, do beneficial things for the game. Again, it sucks that it pushed things out so far, but hopefully by the time we get that stuff down the line, everything will come together in such a way that the game's better for it at the end of the day.
yeah. So the DLC getting pushed, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I'm impressed with getting a DLC at all, to be honest, given
Yeah,
the size of the team at this point. So
yeah.
I wasn't surprised when it got pushed out. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet, so we don't know what we're actually in for. But um, I'm quite looking forward to it. I'm very impressed that they've managed to churn that out.
Yeah, 100%. Um, well, that was the main thing about season three. Then a few last things that I figured might be interesting for us to discuss, kind of relating to year five as a whole.
Yep.
One thing in the past few months that we've seen them definitely ramp their efforts up on is monetization. There used to be, and I do want to point out, because some people try and argue that this is not the case, but as a player of the Division 2, if you own the Warlords of New York expansion, you have not had to pay for any new content in over 4 years. And that's pretty remarkable for a live game.
Hmm.
As long as you own Wony, you've gotten access to the Iron Horse Raid, to Summit, Countdown, Descent, Paradise Lost, those legendary missions they did in Season 10. Like everything has been completely free. So that's great. But they also were really not doing any new cosmetic stuff in the store. We had apparel events, which if you wanted to like pay for keys for, you could. But in these last few months specifically, we've really seen them ramp up, and there's pretty much now a constantly rotating bundle in the store of new cosmetic items, and that has certainly drawn discussion from the community. I think back to when like the recruiter outfit showed up in the store, and that was like $25, and people had thoughts on that. And then this season we had all the rogue agent outfits from Warlords come in. So I'm curious, kind of what you think on just the fact that that's happening more in the game. Do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing, somewhere in between? What are your thoughts on it?
No, I 100% agree with what you've been saying. It's I don't have a problem with monetization, and the way UB, at least with the Division Two, the way they do monetization, it doesn't affect anyone at
Right.
all. It's all apparel based. So I have no problems with that. I buy the season pass every season, but I'm not necessarily an apparel person. I don't buy a huge amount of that. I do
Yeah.
some, but not everything. So we know this game was dead in the water a little while ago. If this is the way that we're keeping this game that we love alive, I have no problems with that whatsoever. If I'm watching someone run around in Aaron Keenan's outfit, I'm not gonna sit there and go, "Ah, why do you have that? I don't want to have to pay for it," sort of thing. I'm stoked to see that sort of support is still being brought to the game because, as we know, it was shut down. And when they decided to bring it back, it was just more about if it could stay profitable, we'll keep supporting it. And this is what is supporting it right now. So I'm more than happy to play part of that.
Yeah, for sure. And my thing is like I am pretty vehemently against like pay to win elements, but again, the game hasn't done
Yes.
any of that. It's purely cosmetic, it's purely vanity. And so, it sounds like we're on the same
Yeah.
page there, that that's pretty acceptable.
Yeah. I see a lot of people saying like, oh, if you could buy keys to earn those tokens to unlock your uh, exotics as part of being pay to win, but it's really not. It's not impacting your ability to play or the way you can perform out there.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I know you're going to like this question. And again, we did
Ooh.
slightly cover this earlier, but how do you feel about the overall story arcs and progression that year five delivered? We've had this full year, which, like we said, started out with hostages being taken. We got them back. We had the stuff at the zoo, more hostages, the recruiter, then New York, Kelso Keener. What stood out to you, either in like the delivery of the story this year or some of the specific choices that they made?
Delivery, of course, but I guess it comes. And I'm going to go all the way back to the OG at this point with Division One.
Do it.
What really stood out to me is, God, okay, this will make sense soon. So just let me banter on for a bit. But
I'm with you.
basically, I had a mentor many years ago who always told me try and understand or at least listen to both sides of the story before you react. And I know probably everyone's sort of heard that sort of story, but that really hit home for me. So the reason I actually started talking about the story with the Division was because I was looking at the way we were playing in Division 1 with, you know, clean is bad, shoot bad, yeah, shoot bad,
Yeah.
clean is bad, yeah. But when you really start digging in and start looking at it from their side, they've actually got some really cool aspects around why they're doing what they're doing. And Joe Ferrer's big fan, big fan.
Same.
He had a really compelling story, and it just I'm a big believer of no one's bad. No, most people aren't bad. Just in general, they've got situation and their experience that has brought to the situation they're at.
There's a reason why
And
they're doing what they're doing.
exactly. So they've all got their own reasons, and yeah, while Joe Ferrer might have been doing bad things in his eyes, he was doing them for the right reason. And if we look at today's story, especially around Keener and things like that, I really kind of enjoy how everything's so much blurrier. That it's not just good versus bad. It's definitely more about those particular aspects of people that right now we don't know their intentions, and I'm talking about Natalia and Calvin. Like, we know what their intentions are, but we don't know the reasons behind it
Right.
that much. So I really like how blurry it's become, and that we have to work with people like Keener. Like, I know we're going to have to work with people like Keener. Kelso's already doing it.
Yeah.
Faye did it previously. I really like how it's blurring that line a bit. Like, even Keener himself, he might not think he's good himself, but I'm sure he believes what he's doing is good. And that's what we're sort of having to work with in order to bring down what is ultimately the bigger problem. And it's just really blurring those lines between good and bad a bit more. It's a bit more real than, I guess, your classic Marvel story of what's good and bad, because I don't think there is such a thing.
Yeah, 100%. And on that Keener note, this is kind of a tangent, but I don't know if you saw, I think I saw someone post this and I went and listened, and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. The message that he leaves us at the end of season 3, that's like addressed directly to us, is so reminiscent of that one that he left in the West Side Piers in the last update for Division 1. Yeah, where it's like, it's just side by side. And there's so many parallels. And that was so good.
So Keener, like, if you look at the very start there, it was all just good versus bad, unless you read into the stories. And then Keener was always that sort of side piece in there that would just tell you that, okay, there's more to it than what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And he kept reminding us the whole way through. And then he died. Or so we thought. And now he's back sort of saying, look, there is more to this. There's still more to this. I really like that sort of aspect to it. Like, it's probably the only good character we've got in the franchise is actually the player character. Everyone else has got their backstories and things like that.
Yeah.
We are doing what we believe is good, like everyone else, but we don't have that backstory because we're the player character.
We are the backstory. Yeah.
Yeah.
One other point, aspect of the story this year that I'll shout out because I really liked it, and there's kind of 2 examples of this, I think, was beyond just the straight up like good and evil stuff, was just the different perspectives on things. So like in season 1, you had the whole deal where the Black Tusk and Natalia are like trying to present themselves to the general public as not the bad guys. And like when you go to the zoo, there's that bit, where the civilians are there, and they seem like genuinely frightened that the Division is there, like storming the facility.
She's the evil villain you love. She's one of my favorite characters. It's very well written. It's very well voice acted. Yeah. So yeah.
And then I also really liked in season 2 when we learn that Johnson is the recruiter. I like how he says, I forget exactly how he puts it, but he's like, if you're with the Division and you're not sided with Cal, like you're not loyal to him, you're off mission. And I remember at the time, like I was talking about that in a video, and a bunch of people were like, how dare they suggest that we're the ones off mission? And I'm like, just because he says it doesn't mean it's true. But clearly he believes that there's these factions within. There's factions within every faction. And I think, like you said, that's what's really cool about the story now, is how gray it is.
Oh, I love it. I think one of my favorite comments I got from Lauren around the end of that season was that all these people with Agent Brian Johnson on their desks are now looking at him going, what the hell? Yeah. But it's not that he's bad. He's got his own reasons. He's following classically what we should be following, which is, sorry, I'm just dropping things on my desk, which is he's following classically what we should be following, but we know that it's not the right path to follow, which is he's following Calvin, who technically is our boss. And so you can't see him as a bad guy as such. He thinks he's doing right.
Yeah. And like under the, technically under the legal structure of the United States, Johnson's in the right because he's, like you said,
Exactly.
following
Exactly.
the So it's very interesting, and I think that was definitely one of my favorite parts about.
I love the blurry lines between Rogue and Division Agent these days. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I
Yeah.
did get one comment though, which I think it was actually Born Diesel, where he mentioned that if you're going to turn Rogue, that's going to if we're going to turn Rogue as
Mhm.
an organization, as a player character, we've got a lot of there's a lot of marketing and branding behind us being not Rogue and the orange and all that sort of side of things. So that's sort of a whole aspect which is unrelated to the story in a lot of ways that I hadn't really considered at that point. But I still think I wouldn't put it past them, the crew, to change us to red. I think there's an opportunity there.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think it could happen.
definitely really curious to see where they take. I mean, given how year
Yeah,
5 left off, how year 6 is going to go, because there is, if they want to make us rogue, there's a lot of gameplay implications as well that they'd have to change
absolutely.
to,
Yeah,
to make that work. So, yeah, definitely very curious to see how that goes. And on that note, the final little bit here that I wanted to go over, um,
we're
you
getting good
know,
with segues here. I'm just saying.
I think we're getting it down. Just took one
Yeah.
episode. Um, when Year 5 was originally pitched at, or we at least got the broader plans of it, the roadmap at Division Day last year, originally it included a Season 4, which of course we're now not getting because that got pushed back. And now the Brooklyn DLC and the Seasons 2.0 deal has been spread out across Year 6. So I'll just say, given that was originally going to be a part of Year 5, what are you personally most looking forward to between kind of those big things that we have coming in Year 6? What are you most excited to get your hands on?
Really good question. Hang on. I think if I go right back a little bit, we talked about West Side Piers at some point.
Yeah,
Um, I really hope that, and I don't know if this is possible for them. I really hope that this is an expansion of the New York map, because what they did with the West Side Piers, it just made it feel like, oh, there's so many options. We could be expanding anywhere at this point,
right.
and it was just a really cool feeling when looking at the open world map that we were working with. I'm hoping it's not just a separate map that we have to sort of travel to.
Right, like you could walk across the Manhattan Bridge and get there
Yeah,
without a loading screen.
absolutely. I mean, the bridge is there. I just don't know if they're in the position to be able to open it up for us.
Yeah,
So, but I guess and I've had a lot of speculation around what I think this will happen in that DLC, and I feel like all of those people he's been rescuing, Keena's got his own settlements over there. He's got his own posse in this whole area that we've
right.
not sort of touched base in. So we're going to be moving into his grounds. We're going to be the enemies, regardless of whether we're red ring or orange ring.
Yeah,
So I feel like we're going to be almost as similar to when we went to Warlords of New York, where no one trusted the division anymore.
right.
We'd created too many problems, so no one actually wanted to deal with us. That's why they had peacemakers and all that sort of stuff.
Whole new
So
territory
I think
there.
it's yeah. So I feel like we're going to be going to a hostile environment, but Keita still wants us.
He
He's
needs
leaving
us.
us those messages. He needs us. Yeah.
No, for sure. That's going to be super cool to dive into. I'll then just say the other one and say that, I'm very curious to see how Seasons 2.0 redefines how we play the division. I'm hoping that it's, transformative enough to the point where, because a lot of people have grown tired of the seasonal model, and I can't blame them. We've been doing
Yep.
very similar objectives for a long time, even though they've done cool things with the story and the delivery. But hopefully that in combination of having a redesign of everything we already have and what we play with Seasons and new stuff with Brooklyn, Year 6 will round out to be pretty
I
awesome.
feel like they've mixed up the seasons quite a bit, at least in the last couple of seasons as well, like the way they've worked, which I quite appreciate. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see what they could do around mixing those up, Seasons 2.0.
Yeah.
I like that they have worked in a few of the maps a bit differently, and you're playing us. Yes, they might be the same maps, but you're playing them very differently, so they don't feel like the same maps.
Yeah, for sure.
I just I don't know how far they're going to go with it, but I'm quite intrigued to see what they do there.
We'll
I'm
find
not
out soon
I'm not
enough.
over this season sort of side of things.
Mhm.
They were quite similar for a long time there, but they have moved a little bit, especially that last season. I wasn't expecting a lot of what we saw there.
Yeah, no, they're definitely working to make it more dynamic. And
Yeah.
when it comes to Year 6, we've got just a bit over a week to go until Ubisoft Forward, and we'll learn more. But I think for now, unless I'm mistaken, that's a wrap on our discussion and review,
is.
in a way, of Year 5 of the Division 2. We went over a lot. I got to thank you very much for taking part in this. I think that was very fun. I think we covered a lot of stuff that people will certainly be interested to hear our thoughts on. And I certainly invite anyone who listened to this to leave your own thoughts on any of these topics that we went over, anything relating to Year 5, down below. I'll be curious to see what people thought on some of the topics that we went over. Do you, sir, have any closing thoughts on this whole thing as we wrap out here?
No, no, no. I just want to thank you for inviting me along and facilitating this. This has been fun. I love a good nerd out, so this works for me any time of the day. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like we mentioned at the start, we hopefully have more plans to expand this in the future. No kind of regular
Yes.
cadence that we're promising, but it's a format that we hope to use again. And like we said, get some more people on here, get even more voices and perspectives. So it should be pretty fun.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. We've definitely got other people in mind
yeah,
as availability sort of comes up. But yeah, like I said, like you said, it's been fun. It'll be cool to sort of see if there's any interest in this going forward.
yeah. So if you guys like it, hit the like button. Otherwise, you never know what'll happen. Now,
That's
yeah.
right.
So that closes out the inaugural round table for the Division 2, talking about Year 5 of the game. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And like I said, hopefully we'll see you back for more in the future. But that is all we've got for now. Bye-bye. Take care. See you later.
See you guys.